Good afternoon, and welcome to today's consequential conversation with acclaimed artist Tony Scott. We're going to begin our program with a very moving and emotional video of her exhibition, Bloodlines.
Time there was slavery time. I can remember when
If I thought that I'd ever be a slave again, I'd take a gun and just end it all right away. Because you're nothing but a dog.
My name is Tony Scott. I am an American. I am the descendant of African slaves, European slave owners, and Native Americans. Bloodlines is a story comprised of historical narratives and a very personal narrative. Historical events now tied to contemporary events and issues. Bloodlines is an important art exhibition that evokes the memory of slavery in the United States. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, said Martin Luther King. In Jewish history, no experience is weightier than that of the Holocaust. In African American history, no experience is weightier than that of slavery.
Good afternoon, CSUDH. I am Dr. Stephanie Brasley, Dean of the University Library. I want to thank you for joining us today for a conversation with acclaimed artist Tony Scott. This semester, the university entered into a strategic partnership with Ms. Scott to inspire our community to explore art through emblematic, historical, and cultural themes. This partnership begins a relationship that will open avenues of innovative academic and co-curricular endeavors. Today's program will be an introduction to the artist, the importance of cultural identity, and how she reflects her tripartite cultural identity through her work, and a discussion of the transformative power of art. Today, we have the Q&A option open in Zoom. If you would like to submit a question, feel free to include it there, and we will try and get to a few of them throughout the program. It is my pleasure now to introduce you to Tony Scott. Ms. Scott was born and raised in South Central Los Angeles. As a multimedia artist, she makes art installations and individual artworks that explore her African American, Native American, and European heritage. Central to her work is the advancement of understanding between cultures and the promotion of a deeper historical consciousness that transcends through narratives, both tragic and of resilience, redemption, and hope. Ms. Scott's artistic brilliance is on full display in her installation Bloodlines, which was the inaugural exhibition of Discovery at the California African American Museum in 2012, funded by a special grant from the Annenberg Foundation. Other iterations of Bloodlines included Bloodlines, the work of Tony Scott, featured in a solo exhibit at South Carolina School of the Arts, Vandiver Gallery, Anderson University, and Bloodlines for La Sombra el Espíritu 2, Women's Healing Rituals in the Diaspora, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, both in 2013. In 2017, Bloodlines Africa was invited as an installation at Cornerstone Winter School in South Africa, and in 2018, Aswarm with the Spirits of All Ages Here, Inconceivable Spaces of Slavery and Freedom, exhibited at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, Sonia Haynes Stone Center for Black Culture and History. Wow, Ms. Scott brings us an impressive portfolio of work that compels us to explore and deepen our understanding of cultural history and its impact on occurrences today. I think you are all really going to enjoy today's program. So without further ado, I would like to hand the program over to the president of our university, Dr. Thomas Parham. Dr. Parham?
Thank you, Dean Braisley. And let me say what an exciting moment this is to partner with you as Dean of our library to feature what is a celebrated artist and really for me, just an artistic genius of Tony Scott. I can't begin this session without really reflecting on what brought us to this point. And so I want to thank a couple of special people along with Tony who were facilitating this particular endeavor. The first, of course, being Kenya Parham, who first acquainted me, I think, with Ms. Scott's work and reminded me about all the work that she had done as I had viewed in the past. And also collaborating that is Anna Fusan. And so we want to thank both Kenya, Anna, and Tony for connecting with us. Now, California State University, Dominguez Hills is ongoing in terms of its progress of becoming what I hope to be the model urban university in America. And it's informed by extraordinary and impactful experiences that we provide our campus constituents, our alumni, and those who are our guests. But through events like the one today, our university is positioning itself as the premier local resource for culturally rich, currently relevant experiences. And so everyone at the university is excited by the generative potential for powerful intellectual and cultural growth that our partnership with Ms. Scott, I think, will provide. And through our students, through our community-centered initiatives, through our illustrious faculty, our campus is dedicated to transforming the lives that will ultimately transform America. And so we seek to provide our students with powerful, dynamic academic and co-curricular learning opportunities of which this is certainly one. Now, our strategic partnership with Ms. Tony Scott, the artist Tony Scott, which will include a showcase of her artistic genius and her intellectual contributions to the field, is an important new avenue for us to fulfill our particular goals. And so Ms. Scott has said that learning of my multicultural heritage has inspired me to give life to the lost images and stories of history. It has inspired me to give life to those lost and storied images of history. Her imaginative renderings and those of lost images and stories have left indelible marks of the artistic excellence on the national and international stage. And we are simply delighted that she has decided to partner with this president and our university in bringing some of that artistic genius to bear for our students in our university. And so this new collaboration represents really a fundamental teaching moment for all of us, but a meshing of the individual and institutional goals. And I believe that we will energize and inspire a whole new generation of people who will then take a look at this work and be inspired by the model and the example that she sets. And so I am just excited beyond measure for our university and the collaboration and the synergy that we are about to create. And so now I'd like to introduce the famed artist, Ms. Tony Scott. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Dr. Parham. I'm almost, well, I am speechless. That's how much, how passionate I am about this opportunity, this platform. I believe art can be a tool for change. And I'm so excited to be able to have this partnership and to use art in that forum, change lives.
Yeah, so I'm delighted you joined us. So let's see if we can't get into this. So for the audience sake, Tony and I is going to have a little bit of dialogue and a couple questions. We'll take a pause and there may be another video in there as well. And then we'll continue before we get to some Q&A with the broader audience of attendees. So Tony, we've recently announced in the news and a press release, a partnership between you and California State University, Dominguez Hills. Tell us what that partnership represents to you as an artist and a celebrated one at that, and a regional comprehensive university here at the elbow joint of really South Los Angeles and the South Bay communities of Los Angeles County.
Is saying everything, is that too broad an answer? That's how I feel about it. You know, in some ways I feel like the prodigal daughter, returning to home, finding support, from being an outsider to being a part of a family. Our partnership and the advancement and mutual interest serves what I've always aspired to, advance humanity. And lifting and being a part of the community and the seeing the development and dreams becoming reality is a testament to the excellence of Cal State University, Dominguez Hills. So it means a lot to me and I'm so excited about it, Ken. Enjoying this moment and looking forward to more.
Good. And I'm reminded, I think, in this moment about the great Algerian psychiatrist, Frantz Fanon. And Fanon argued that each of us should be able to ask and answer three fundamental questions. And he was talking about this in the context of an African-centered reality, but I think it has import, certainly as a psychologist, for people of whatever cultural and ethnic background they represent. The first question was, who am I? What is my nature, my essence, my character? The second question for Fanon was, am I who I say I am? Questioning, what is the level of congruence between what I preach and how I live? The third was, am I all I ought to be? meaning with whatever talents and gifts, potential that I've been blessed with by the Creator, am I actualizing and operationalizing those gifts to their fullest? So as we introduce you to this campus community and those in our listening audience, help us understand, right? And you reflect on your identity as an artist. Who is Tony Scott? And help our audience understand really your nature, your essence, and your character.
Well, I just want to begin with saying I'm so excited that you chose Fanon as a point of inspiration in this conversation, because he was the inspiration in my thesis at the University of Santa Barbara. My paper was entitled "There is no post to colonialism," and I'm an advocate as I try to represent my art in dialogue across the body of my work, that there are elements that are so active and so much a part of our daily life that we need to really, be honest about it and not whitewash it. So saying that there's no post to colonialism, it's an ongoing issue. Your question as to who am I? I am a Black, Indigenous, and European woman. I'm a citizen of the Muskogee Nation. I grew up in South Central Los Angeles. I am an artist who is passionate about the world, passionate about justice, human dignity, and liberty. I am a spiritual person. I believe there is a God. I believe I have a responsibility to my God and to my fellow human beings and to nature, and to contribute goodwill with everything that I do.
Phenomenal. So in the midst of that, of trying to come to grips with your own identity, obviously as a mature woman now, it's very easy for you to crystallize and really articulate that sense of identity. But in your developmental formative years, talk a little bit about your journey that had you come to realize who you are as this Black, Indigenous, right, European descent woman from South Central who is doing all these marvelous things.
Well, from my earliest memory, race has always played a role in my life. From the unspoken color line of restrictions and discrimination to my experience being bused from Los Angeles to Westchester and Orville Wright, to witnessing the Watts riots, to grieving over the loss of so many people of color at the hands of police. And also I grew up a great deal growing up in visiting museums. And there I witnessed the absence of images of people who represent my world. So all of those collectively have been impactful. I just had this feeling that you were called to serve, and seeing a need and seeing that I had the ability or have the ability to address these concerns and also to pay homage to my ancestors is what has inspired my work to date and going forward.
Interesting. And I'm also reminded about the notion of courage, because I think that artists are among a group of professionals who in fact are some of the best truth tellers about both the upside and the night side of this kind of American experiment. But in my own research, Tony, I've really framed a more fundamental question. And the question is, how does one maintain a sense of cultural integrity, who you are as a cultural being, in a world that does not support or affirm your humanity as a person of fill in the blank, whatever descent that is? Could be African, Indigenous, European, etc. Because in order to sometimes get ahead in the world, particularly with some of the limitations you talked about earlier, you've got to be able to almost leave your ethnic identity, your cultural self at the door. Because if you come too cultural, you restrict some opportunities, but if you don't come cultural enough, you lose your soul in that. How has that, or is that question even relevant for you in your life, or how have you been able to navigate that space?
Your question is so relative. I was just having, this conversation with friends recently with pieces that I had on exhibit at UTA Artist Space in Beverly Hills. And there I exhibited Death at the Hands of the Police, I Can't Breathe, Black Ascension. And these aren't pieces that most people are going to want to live with in their home. A Black man who recently being murdered by the police, splayed out with the names of people who died, through this brutality. But there is this this call again that I feel that is a part of my life. It's a sacrifice. I actually wear multiple hats. I have a body of work that's about more abstract concepts that like this blue piece behind me. It's a part of a prayer. It's a part of respect for nature. So there's multiple things that I do. But the bigger message for me is just, I feel like I have this obligation. My uncle, Richard Purcello, produced this book and gifted the family, I think it was now maybe like 12, 13 years ago, that included about 10 years of his research and genealogy of our ancestry. And in this book, there were pictures of slaves and there were pictures of people that were enslavers of our indigenous family, and also in connection with that are stories that my father shared about his grandmother who was an indentured slave. So in all of these stories, I realized that these are the shoulders, these are the people whose shoulders I stand on, who made these sacrifices. I can contribute, so I should. So there's a balance. It's tough. Really, really, really tough, but I just feel, my soul sings when I'm doing what I believe contributes to humanity.
And we who are the recipients, I think, of your artistic genius certainly do hear and see your soul singing in the work that you have produced. So we are grateful for that. Let's see if we can pause for a moment and let me turn it back to Dean Braisley, who may want to bring some other folk into the conversation. Stephanie?
Thank you, President Parham and Ms. Scott. The discussion thus far has been absolutely riveting. We're going to take a moment to see if some of our attendees have questions. If you do have questions, please feel free to put them in the question and answer chat box. We do have one for you, Ms. Scott, right now. Our attendee asked, how do you experience your work of art? They said, this is so interesting and your work is so amazing. So you are a producer, but how do you also experience your work apart from that?
Well, one of the interesting things about, being a producer of things, being an artist, and what most people who view the work are not a part of is that journey, the making of the work. So for example, carving a piece of wood is so exciting to me. The end product, I'm really happy, I completed the project and I hope it speaks to people, but it's the process of working with nature, smelling, this wood, thinking about nature and how it impacts our lives, carving stone, the earth. This is the whole process. It's very labor intensive, but there's something really beautiful about that process. So in each of the mediums that I work, each one has a very specific experience. And so that's what's exciting to me. But besides the end result, it's that journey.
Thank you. We do have another question. What was your inspiration to create Bloodlines?
Well, a couple of stories come to mind. I want to share one that was shared to me by my father, John Sims. And Dad said, he was telling me the story about his grandmother. They called her Fine. And Fine was found in an abandoned shack in the South. And he says, he's written this down for me to just have as, archive as something to cherish and remind myself of this story, that he said they picked out the babies like puppies. and they called a fine because she was healthy and robust. This was after slavery, but she was an indentured slave. She was put to work and kept from, interacting with the community. And so a lot of people didn't know that, she was held captive. But to make a long story short, so Fine at some point, made her way away from this place of oppression, and she was this loving, you know, person who supported the family, who was able to give even after having experienced so much pain. So it's stories like that. And my dad telling me the story and seeing the tears in his eyes, and I love my dad and respect him immensely. I said, Dad, I'm going to keep this story going. This is an important story. You are the person that you are because of great grandmother Fine. So that narrative is just integral, to keep alive in memory of her, and also a reminder to me that resilience is in my blood, and I'm really proud of though there's struggle, I'm proud of those that have fought the fight, and I will continue to honor them in my stories.
Thank you so much for that. And before we move on to the second part of our conversation, we're now going to share some images of Ms. Scott's work around the narrative of social justice.
The thing that you're looking at right now is called the Freedom Sculpture. And the Freedom Sculpture is a memorial to Holocaust survivors and to those who lost their lives so tragically, and is a piece that is very close to my heart because it was created in collaboration between myself and my friend, the late Dr. Henry Oster, a Holocaust survivor from Cologne, Germany, who passed away last year. Henry was an incredible human being with a tremendous capacity to love, to persevere, and to teach people what humanity really means. He was imprisoned at 9 years old and evaded death 15 times before his rescue from Auschwitz at 14 years old. And so through divine destiny, Henry and I were introduced 7 years ago, and we found we shared this common interest, the desire to inspire the world through art, to have hope and to have forgiveness towards others in order to see the humanity in others. So the sculpture you see here is an inspired recreation of his 6-inch wood sculpture that Henry created in 1945 as a boy while living in an orphanage in France after being rescued. This freedom sculpture depicts liberation, the breaking away from tyranny, and the pushing open of prison doors to freedom, to a new beginning. Henry believed, as I do, that genocide, discrimination, and dehumanization is colorless, genderless, and must not be tolerated. We shared that belief that seeing humanity of others is the key. So this work honors the enduring spirit of Henry and his fellow Holocaust survivors, as well as those who perished. It was Henry's dream before he passed away last year to see the freedom sculpture installed in the Museum of Tolerance in Los Angeles, where Henry lectured for 30 years. Funding needed to pass and install in scale and 10 feet for the walls, and on about humanity and forgiveness. Next slide. Is there a slide on I Can't Breathe? Was created in plaster in 2009 as an emotional response to the murder of Oscar Grant and so many people who have been killed without regard. This year, I was deeply grieved by the death of George Floyd and decided to recast the bust in concrete. Concrete is the material of the street, a hard material that is the foundation on which many things are built. It is also the place where so many Black people have violently perished. In 2020, COVID-19 has impacted the world and has laid to rest so many loved ones. So I Can't Breathe is a call to humanity to respect life, the environment, and each other. Death at the hands of the police. Plaster bandages are designed to treat broken bones. Death at the hands of the police incorporates bandages as both a medium and a metaphor. A plaster cast of a man lying on the ground after a brutal encounter with police. His only crime, walking while Black, signified by the target on his chest, symbolizing the human toll. Created in 2009 following the murder of Oscar Grant by police, the tragic irony is that 11 years later, nothing has changed with the death of George Floyd and countless others. Written in chalk are the names of people of color who have died as a result of police encounters. underscoring the erasure of those whose lives were taken. This sculpture is both a memorial and a stark reminder of the horror of police brutality and the mounting numbers of the fallen. Black Ascension. Black Ascension explores the dichotomy of being Black in America. I wanted to reflect our struggles with systemic racism and the current protests for justice and equality, as well as environmental concerns. But at the same time, I wanted to invoke that sense of hope and resilience found in people of color. I repurposed natural materials. The queen palm fronds for this sculpture are comprised of the sculpture. Even in the fiercest storms, palm trees will stay rooted in the ground. During a hurricane, they will be blown parallel to the ground. And after the storm passes, it will rise back up until it's standing tall. The palm tree is the epitome of resilience. Mirroring that resilience we see in the ascension of people of color, our first Black vice president, Kamala Harris, and the history-making election of 6 Native American and Native Hawaiian candidates elected to Congress. Ever resilient and against all obstacles, we may bend, but our ascension will not stop or be broken. The Black Indians, an American story. Blacks and Native Americans have been both allies and adversaries. We've been demoralized, robbed, murdered, and disenfranchised. Though overlooked and whitewashed, the land, the labor on which this country was constructed is undeniably an American story. Black Indians are rich in culture and resilient. Our legacy, our families, our ancestors are a beautiful people. And this rendering illustrates our place in American history. Genetic connections. A young Chinese woman is juxtaposed a Native American woman. The sliver of light is a takeaway of close genetic connections. A portion of the face is extracted and exchanged with the other. Genetic anatomical similarities are not a coincidence. They are in fact, though distant in time and location, the bond of DNA is ever present if we stop to look and celebrate. Ancestor or descendant, we are all interrelated. The human race, we are one people, we are one humanity. Out of Africa, the human family has migrated. We changed colors, habits, derived contrasting traditions and cultures, settled in different places around the world. The one constant is that we are human. DNA has unquestionably defined we are interrelated.
Wow. I think as we take a moment to just reflect on those pieces and the meaning, I'm reminded of another question, I think, for us to kind of grapple with. A great deal of your work uses multimediums, and that it appears to be anchored in your own cultural identity. And how has your own cultural identity shaped your artistic expression? And I want to couple that with another question we have from Dr. Frank Martin, all the way from South Carolina, who asked, as an artist working across multimedia formats, how do you decide which medium to foreground in a given work? That is to say, do you approach your work as a nationalist with predetermined ideas regarding what will be shown? Or do you approach your work as an empiricist, discovering the work via the process itself of creation and using medium as an inspiration to move you?
Well, I'll answer and say both. I know it's a simple answer, but it's the truth. Each medium helps me tell a story. Installations is about immersion. Photography is a document of the times of reality. Digital is a combining of mediums and dreams and exploration of that's more intuitive, that comes about through sort of the playing and mixing of photography and the computer. Painting is the textures of life, and sculpture is 3D. Selecting what medium works best. Well, behind me, you can see a couple of sculptures that were created in wax. So that was the medium. I wanted to fill this vacuum of images of people of color absent in museums. So, uh, most ideal in bronze. So each, even though they're diverse materials, it's like, let's say an orchestra. There are many players, many instruments, but there's one song that's played. And my experience as the conductor of materials is just depicting, these stories that are in my heart through these mediums. And diversity medium sort of runs in the family. I'm my daddy's, the father's daughter, I think that's how it's phrased. And I grew up in the garage with him. So power tools, all of these things are very natural. And it's about 5 generations of my artists in my family. So diverse material is not uncommon. It's actually very natural.
Very nice. So Toni, the zeitgeist of our times in the nation is really fraught with tensions that are anchored in cries for social justice, calls for police reform due to the murder of Black citizens, as your art points out, a global pandemic, financial challenges, and really an exposed racial divide that's been really exacerbated as a result of the election. How has this season of what Gil Scott-Heron used to call winter in America informed your work? And are there any specific pieces, I think, in addition to what you've shown, that highlight your own truth-telling about what's going on in America today?
Well, there are tragic events happening in America today. But as you know, some of the images that I shared with you, some were produced 11 years ago and some were produced last year. What we're experiencing in the country, with the exception of the pandemic, with racism and injustice and systemic, the challenges that we face, is not something new. America is built a great deal on genocide and on the backs of African slaves. So you have to get to the core of this. I think if you know history and the core and the understanding of trauma and how trauma's moved on and privilege, all of these things, they're not new stories, but the body of work that I created, past and washing, the washing is a part of who we are as a nation. And it's critical to know the past so that we also know not to repeat it, but also to rectify some of the core that has been impacted on the people of this nation.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got another question from one of our faculty and staff here at Dominguez Hills, from Tim Caron, who talks about your work seems to draw upon the documentary record of African-American history and is reminiscent of works like Toni Morrison's The Black Book. Can you talk more about the intersection of history and artistic expression as it appears in your work?
I was disconnected. Would you mind repeating the question? I'm out,
Sure.
My studio's in a greenhouse on a farm, so Wi-Fi is not, really.
It's all right. We will struggle with it, and we go back to old school when we used to have to repeat it. So they say it sounds so nice, we'll repeat it twice. So from Tim Caron, as part of the Dominguez Hills family, he asks, your work seems to draw upon the documentary record of African-American history and is reminiscent of works like Toni Morrison's The Black Book. Can you talk more about the intersection of history and artistic expression as it appears in your work?
Well, artists have for centuries been given commentary to the sign of the times. Delacroix, Jericho, Goya, wars, famine, artists have recorded this, and it's, I think, part of our, responsibility. So, America history. I don't know who said it, but history does repeat itself, and I hope to instruct and remind that some of these incidences have happened and are critical to draw closer attention and to not forget and to incorporate these lessons that those that have suffered in the past. So it's just I think it's like storytelling, recording, archiving. Artists, we've always been a part of the community, wanting to record it, and so that's what my art is.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. I've got another question I want to ask you, but I want to go one more to our audience who sent in. Cheryl Coward asked the question, who are some of your major artistic influences from the beginning of the career until now? And how do you stay inspired?
Well, there's been many influences. I wanted to start with Avery Clayton because he was so instrumental in inspiring me and empowering me that I could become an artist. So I met him many years ago, and he was a person of color that was a practicing full-time artist. That was transformative to me. It wasn't something that I considered that I could do, as a profession. So I would say, just that experience from the beginning was life-changing. There's been so many other mentors. Joan Carl's one creates incredible monuments. There's just, in almost every genre, Elizabeth Catlett, her work on social justice as well. So it's not just one person. I could probably go, from one century to the next. In 1800s, it was this person, 1600s was that person. But I would say today, Ed Dwight, Joan Carl, and other artists like Betty Saar, and so many other artists who are just phenomenal and true to their work, and have a voice that is an important one to lift and to educate us all.
All right, and Evelyn Perez asks, what emotions do you feel when Bloodline was exhibited in North Carolina? And do you feel fear or backlash or people's, reaction to it?
That's a good question. I've been surprised. Well, let me just start with, the creation of Bloodlines. That was an emotional experience, and I cried often. Each time that I, looked to add a work to the overall body of the installation, I explored new narratives, and I was always sadly exposed to a horror beyond belief. It was just layer after layer after layer. There were points where I didn't think that I could push on because it was just such a personal and emotional experience. I have the faces of 12 of my ancestors who were slaves, and the names of 21 who were slaves. So, I found my heroes. Frederick Douglass was my hero to make it through the creation of Bloodline. So, I read his book, and it empowered me, to the responsibility of making it, and to stay strong and push beyond, just my own immediate emotional response to it. I think emotion is a part of the creative process, what inspires. So with Bloodlines, it was a very emotional thing to create, but it's something that that's still a part of my journey, and has also been created or been a part of a lot of other people's journeys as well. I've had a lot of people volunteer and support me. Addressing the question about, do I worry about feedback? One of the things that I have just embraced is like, these stories that I share are really personal stories. Great grandmother Fine, who was an indentured slave. the Colonel Tops plantation where my ancestors were enslaved, the May family plantation. So, you know, I have to tell my story. This is the truth of my journey and of my ancestry. And whether people accept it or reject it is not on me. It's just me telling this story. I Going to North Carolina was really painful because some of my ancestors who were enslavers have history. We have history there. So being in that place is a lot different than, you know, being here in California and thinking about that place. I showed in South Carolina and at a predominantly white university, and I wasn't sure what to expect. And I was so moved by the participation of the faculty who supported my narrative and wanted to advance it and collectively participated in telling the story about slavery. So, you know, I think, I know that a lot of people face conflict and confrontation, but that hasn't been my journey so much with the art that I create.
Very good. So one piece I'm curious about, Toni, you have described your identity and embraced the African, the indigenous, and the European. And I'm particularly about the European part because phenotypically, if you go anyplace else, people will obviously look at you as a woman of color, but your embracing of the European ancestry side, my guess is must come as a surprise to some of the audiences that you display your work to, or even the narratives that you create. What has been the reaction from the broader white community to some of your work and the embracing of that part of your own sense of identity?
I think a curiosity. There's, you know, there's guilt. There are private conversations that I've had with people about their relatives and racism within their family. I have this piece that I created called Evaluating the White in Me. So some pieces I've just created a platform. Well, let me tell you this story and you derive, you know, the answer. Do you think, you know, oppressing my family for 300 years was okay? You know, so there are things that I just put out there, and I like people to just walk away and you know, define their experience with that piece of work. You know, America is diverse, and the world is diverse. No one is of one pure blood. You know, there might be shades of us, but we're all, you know, one human family, and no one is one single thing. I just happen to be living in this country in America with this story of indigenous, African, and European, and able to trace that 600 years actually on the European side, and about say 150 years on the African and my indigenous, you know, 10,000 years. So it's not a, you know, not unusual here, but most times people are very responsive in a positive way.
And I know we're coming close to our time, but I've got to get one more question in from our Vice President, Deborah Wallace, who asked, you utilize several mediums to express your work. Is there a specific medium that you prefer? And what is the influence of that preference?
I've been asked that question a lot, and I really can't say that I'm in love with one more than the other. Each one brings something special to me, and each one is a tool to express something that's important to me. So my totem poles is about ancestry, tradition, culture, my African roots. The stone is, I created that as a response to wanting to fill a vacuum of images that I've seen at museums of, you know, of whites who are portrayed as gods. And I said, well, I want to, you know, have pieces that, in that same medium, Carrara marble, that depict Black people, to, you know, have our place in history. And so each one, you know, really is, it's like, again, it's like a dance, or it's like a song. It changes depending on what excites me. and what the story is. Lately, it was the palm fronds. The piece Black Ascension is made up of about 100 palm seeds that I just collected, and eventually it told me what it wanted to be. So it's just a reaction to what's around me and what how I feel at the time.
Well, I wanted to make sure we highlighted to the audience all three of the mediums and even more I think that you use, because as we begin to roll out and really expand our strategic partnership between you and our university, a lot of that will be on display in the coming months and years. I think that we'll be working together. And I want to just kind of tease the audience a little bit in that um, one of the things I've created since being president here is a presidential distinguished lecture. And my goal is to try to bring people to the audience that will help frame the discourse on a whole range of issues. And if you think that you've been impressed with the art that Toni has done and the narrative she's really shared with us this evening, I can't wait to show you what we're about to do together come next spring. So stay tuned for an upcoming event that we're planning for, I think, February, Toni and African History Month. And we're going to try to combine both the multimedia art or whatever Toni decides to put on display that day for us, along with maybe, if I can get it to work, some music from one of our orchestras locally, and see if we can't improvise in the moment to kind of create that piece and bring that together from the work of some featured artists in that way. So I want to thank you, Toni, for helping us to introduce this partnership between you and California State University, Dominguez Hills. As I said before, we strive to be the place, the university, the resource where these topics of race, culture, and identity and art become the topics of critical discourse and analysis. And we are proud to bring them to you as an audience. Before closing, I would be remiss if I did not thank a whole host of people who helped us put this together. Again, we want to thank our ceremonies and events team, Marilyn and Kim. We want to thank our technology team who helped us to be in that space. And we could not do anything without Fidel and Kata and those folk. And I want to thank Dean Stephanie Braisley, who has helped to really usher in and really push this forward to work with that. And again, I want to give sincere thanks and appreciation to just a couple of phenomenal individuals without whose really participation and really introduction of Toni, this would not be possible. That is to Anna Fusan. Anna, we love you and we thank you. And we look forward to doing more work with you. And to Kenya Parham. Yes, she is my daughter. She is a daddy's girl. And Mama would claim her as well. But between she, Anna, and Toni, they are the ones who really facilitated us being able to create this partnership. And I'm so grateful for them. So on behalf of all of us, Dean Braisley included, who this is her shop, we want to thank everybody for being with us today. We want to invite you to stay tuned for what we have in store into the future. So look forward coming in February. You'll see announcements in January coming up about something special we're about to do. And we'll turn that one into a presidential distinguished lecture featuring, right, the magnificent genius and artistry of the artist, the one, the only, Miss Toni Scott. Toni, thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you so much. I can guarantee you this: Cal State University, Dominguez Hills, is an inspired place, and I know there's going to be a whole new body of work that's going to be produced as a part of this relationship and partnership.
And we look forward to displaying some of that work and some of the works that you'll decide that you want to have us curate here on display. And when it's safe to do so, and or if we have to do it virtually, we'll figure that out. We will get that done, but we are locked and loaded and ready to go for the synergy that we're going to create. And I want to close by reminding folk, as we started with Fanon, perhaps we should end with Fanon, that Fanon reminds us that each generation, my friends, out of relative obscurity, must reach out and seek to fulfill its legacy or betray it. And as you think about that third question Fanon asked about, am I all I ought to be? It is right, undoubtable that the gifts, the talent, the genius that this woman has been given are certainly on full display. And she has done a lot to both fulfill rather than betray that legacy. And so we thank her for that. Toni, we appreciate you. We love your work. And we thank you for being with us. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of all of the faculty, staff, senior administration, our 17,727 students, and our 100,000 alumni around the world, I'm Dr. Thomas Parham. I thank you for joining us this evening, and we'll see you again. Take care.